Welcome to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to a video where we're basically going over Michael Keane's new contract and basically weighing up the pros and cons. Is this a good move for Everton, and what does it mean for us moving forward in terms of transfers, and where does Michael Keane fit into this team as well? So, Terry, do you think it's a good move to get Michael Keane signed to a 5-year deal?
Well, yes, in strictly business sense, he was approaching, his contract was winding down, and then you have to make it before, he had 2 years left, and before he gets to 1 year left, you need to make a decision. Either you sell him when you've still, got a strong position of leverage, or you sign him to a new deal and get him secured. So I think this summer, if we'd have got Gabriel, we may have looked to sell Michael Keane. Say, it's a different timeline where COVID doesn't happen. We get Gabriel in March, and the market's still the way it would have been, and the season ended months ago. We may have got interest from Michael Keane. There was rumours, a few months ago, pre-COVID, that Tottenham were interested in him, Arsenal as well. It may have been something we looked to do. A lot's changed since then. Obviously, we've pulled out the deal for Gabriel. Money's become a lot tighter, and the manager, who was only in his infancy at the club around that lockdown time, he'd only been here a couple of months, has now been in several more months, best part of a year. He seems to like Michael Keane. So maybe there's been a change of opinion on Michael Keane within the club due to the change of manager. Because obviously what the manager thinks of the first team squad is, the first and foremost most important thing. And I noticed from the very off, and I was a bit, it didn't confuse. I can't think of the word. It interested me. I noticed it, and it intrigued me.
Intrigued, and that was what I was going to say.
That was the word I was grasping for it. Because I can't speak without fancy flowery language, but it intrigued me.
Just whip the dictionary out in the middle of the show.
Yeah, exactly. It intrigued me that every time Carlo Ancelotti would rattle off players he wants to build around, he'd say, we've got a young squad, instead of saying a good spine, he said spinal cord of the team, got good core of players, and he would always list Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Richarlison, Mason Holgate, Luca Dean, Michael Keane, and that was like the name, because those other four, everyone knows they're our best players. If no fan would say, even the fans who don't like Calvert-Lewin will know that he's one of the young players that the manager wants to build around. Michael Keane was a strange one. He didn't immediately stick out as he's one of the good players you need to build around on the level of like the Luca Dean or a Richarlison. But he said it a few times, and then after the lockdown, his form improved a lot in the sense of he started to see him excel in this sort of style that, Carlo implemented, the 4-4-2. I don't want to say low block, but it was a low air block than it was, due to the fact we had no pace basically in centre midfield, and we had not much pace at the back, so we started to sit deeper. And that's always where Michael Keane has played well. Whenever he's played in a low block, did it at Burnley, did it under different spells at Everton. Sadly we've had various managers, so different managers play different styles. And now there's been a very big public display by this manager and by the club that no, we see Michael Keane as an important part of the team, an important personality. He is part of that core group of players we're going to build around. So he's got a new 5-year contract, and I'm sure with that will come increased status within the dressing room. Like he's clearly had a big show made now of he's one of Carlo's men. So we've got to look at it like that and go, right, well, people had the doubts over Michael Keane, myself included, have gone back and forth on him quite a lot, but the manager's, made a big statement now saying he's one of my players, so I'm going to use him, and that's basically the way it is.
I mean, we spoke about Gabriel having that deal maybe agreed in March. How much of this decision on Michael Keane, and I think maybe the Michael Keane contract situation also helped the club make their mind up on Gabriel as well, in a way where we step away because we instead offer Keane a contract. How much of that's been dictated by how well Michael Keane played in the sort of post-lockdown games? Because his performances were way better than they were before lockdown, weren't they?
I think it will have played a part in it, definitely. Like we
Obviously,
will
the
have.
pandemic's the main thing that stopped us going after Gabriel, but with that in mind, is maybe interest cool because Keane played better than we thought maybe before, in the post-lockdown period.
Yeah, not just Keane, probably Jacob Branthwaite as well. You've got to remember, in March, Branthwaite hadn't played a senior game, so I'm sure the idea and the sort of perception of him at the club was the same way we look at Gibson. Needs a few loans, not really ready, but we see potential. Michael Keane back then, obviously his stock was lower than it is now. Like he hadn't, he was third choice, wasn't he? Let's be honest. He'd lost his place to Mason Holgate. Yerry Mina had established a partnership with Holgate, and that when Keane played, people sort of went, "Oh, Michael Keane, he's a bag of nerves," and people didn't greet his inclusion, enthusiastically. Several months go by of lockdown, comes back in, plays well in a that's not over egging either. He played well in a few games. He didn't smash the lockdown and the Project Restart games. And
I think he was the best of a bad bunch, wasn't he? He was he was head and shoulders above a lot of the rubbish that we had out there.
Yeah, he was one of the few plus points, wasn't he? Of the things we didn't know, we knew Dean and Richarlison were our two best players, but we didn't know Gordon was going to be as good as he played. We didn't know Keane was going to have a decent turnaround. So I think the club have reassessed. They've sat down and said, "Listen, Gabriel's taking the piss. We've got other areas that need sorting out. We've got 4 centre backs there in Keane, Mina, Holgate, and Branthwaite. They're all right. If you're going to play a sort of deeper counter attack and back to front style, you don't really need, a new centre-back. You do need new midfielders, though. You need a few new midfielders. We were linked with Højbjerg, and a lot of people at the time were sort of thinking, is he by himself enough, or do we need 2? And the common consensus was we need at least 1 midfield. We need 2 midfielders. We can't just have 1 because we're back at square one if he gets injured. And we've suddenly gone from 1 to 3. So there's clearly been a meeting between the power brokers at the club, manager, sporting director, Bill Kenwright probably. They've all sat down and said, yeah, the centre-backs are fine. Keane suits the way we're going to play. Branthwaite's better than we thought he was. Why are we spending money on a centre-back who's clearly not that eager to come anyway? So
For once, the club have been intelligent like that. I think it's not something we've done too often, unfortunately.
Well, good, yeah, because it's a restacking of the sort of the chips, and all the pieces are in the correct place. We finished this summer, the famous 2017 summer. We had 4 attacking midfielders. Rooney, Sigurdsson, Klaassen, and Vlasic. He gets forgot about, but he was at 10 technically as well. And we had 1 left back who was in his 30s and no striker, no senior striker. And we had Calvert-Lewin, who was a kid at the time. And so why did we buy that many, number 10s and leave 2 areas really short on players? And we'd have bought a centre back, and we've got 4 potentially. Gibson, 5 decent options there. We'd end up with 6 capable centre backs and no centre midfielders who can do a job. Would have been stupid. They've clearly sat down and said, "Yeah, let's have a little look at this again, shall we?" We've learned a lot, since our last meeting in March. Probably we've got defenders are better than we thought they were, and the midfielders are certainly worse than we thought they were.
Far worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's definitely good to see that the power brokers are actually paying attention for once, because they clearly weren't 3 years ago, were they?
I think 3 years ago they were all not paying attention to each other either. I think they were all just doing their own thing.
Well, Steve Walsh was too busy going and paying for brasses in Italy with his briefcase.
Allegedly. I mean, from what you hear from that time, now that it's all been said and done, there was people at the club signing players independent of each other. That's how you ended up with multiple players in the same position. It doesn't mean to say now everyone's on board and everyone's all focused on doing things right, but we seem to be doing things at least, visibly better than we were. Got a better manager, got a better director of football. and more focus on the areas that needs, addressing. Imagine we'd have gone into this start of this season, even if we wouldn't have been like that at the end of the window. Imagine the first game at Spurs, we had Gabriel and we still had those midfielders. Now it's going to look like, fingers crossed, we're going to have one at least midfielder in. So we've at least addressed the weakest area of the squad. How we'll end the whole window, hopefully we'll have quite a few, fresh faces in and quite a few players out the door to balance it. But
that's the defence is where we've got to go from here.
I'm not the biggest fan of Michael Keane. I don't think he's shown enough so far to warrant a new 5-year deal. But the manager disagrees, and he's disagreed quite publicly now with the contract, and he thinks there's a player there to play his style. So this could be something that in a year's time we think, how wrong were we on Michael Keane? The way we were going to play, he was perfect.
Or how wrong are we on Michael Keane? We've just given him a 5-year contract and he can't run.
Well, yeah.
Well, I think I have a funny feeling though that even though we are tying him down to a new long-term contract, I think he could well be a backup defender in the years to come. I think maybe it's buying us time for the future. I think he does have a part to play, but maybe not as a starter beyond this season. I do think that's where we will go with it. I think it'll be Holgate and somebody else.
Well, the advantage of his position is there's plenty of competition. He found that last season. If you don't play well, you're out the team because there's Yerry Mina there. There's now Branthwaite. It's Holgate. You'd want there to be competition for places where no one's guaranteed. You want to be able to hear on your Twitter feed that a player's picked up an injury and not have your heart sink and just go, okay, we'll just play him then. If I was about to think of a position where you've got like-for-like quality, but there isn't any. It's probably the only position in the team. If you found out that Yerry Mina got injured, say, as he always does apparently, but if you found out Yerry Mina picked up a knock and it was going to have to be Keane and Holgate, you wouldn't panic and think, we're terrible there, would you?
On the other hand, if Pickford got injured and you found out it was going to be Sirigu, you'd be like, yes.
Yeah, it's one of them. You want to get to that point where there's enough quality in each position of the team where you don't dread injuries. We very rarely had that at Everton, but we need it now more than ever. We need players in positions who can come in and not have a massive drop off in quality. And they obviously see Michael Keane as good enough to be one of the 4 centre backs. And
fair play. I mean, it's certainly. I'd rather see Keane get a contract extension than a Sigurdsson.
Yeah, imagine
the Sigurdsson contract announcement. It's just like everyone's head would fall off.
See, we go and burn down the Lava building at that point.
Sandro's gonna get his wages double for another 5 years.
Re-signed Cuco Martina on a free.
Oh yeah, when we did that with Pistone, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, re-sign Umani like we did with Pistone. Oh, God. So there you go, guys. Michael Keane gets a new 5-year contract. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I think this one's very much going to be debated by the fan base. It's going to be divisive, this one. So definitely let us know your opinions. Give us a comment below. Give this video a like and subscribe for more content. And until next time, guys, thank you for watching on the Toffee Blues.